welcome, friends, to episode 5 of Working Women, where we cover career readiness, job hunting best practices, and how to overcome obstacles, particularly as women in the workplace. I'm Heather Kazad, founder of Kazad Events and Communications, which serves mission-driven organizations and small businesses looking to reach their audiences in creative ways. And with me is the wonderful, the fantastic, the lovely Neera Berner, Executive Director of the Cabell County Medical Society, a network of West Virginia doctors building community. Hey, Neera.
Hi, Heather.
I'm excited for today's conversation because we're officially halfway through this limited run series, thank God. And I thought we'd shake up the format a little bit at this point. You've heard a lot from me, so starting today, we're welcoming a new guest each episode to talk about her background, share her challenges, and tell her story.
You've heard plenty from us over the last few weeks. Now we'll get to learn from people in different industries and take our conversation from theoretical to real-life examples.
Our first guest, after noted fashion icon Matt Sowards in episode 3, is someone I have known most of my life. And when I say most of my life, I mean, we're talking almost 30 years now, which is insane. But she is not only my longest best friend, she is also the director of Kennesaw State's Family Enterprise Center. Please welcome Dr. Sara Davis.
Yay!
Thank you, Heather. I'm so excited to be here with you and Neera and with the audience. This is a great group, and I hope that they have the opportunity to learn from all of our experiences.
That's the goal, right? I mean, so thank you for making the time for us today, first and foremost. And you know the podcast and generally what we're about here. I've given you plenty of background information on what we're trying to do. But also, you're such a good first guest because you've done so much over the years. I'm very proud of you, I just have to say. I mean, off the top of my head, you did real estate for a while very successfully, and a lot of like city revitalization things that you were part of while you were still in college. And then obviously you did your PhD work with a focus on family business and succession planning. Now you're running a university center where you meet entrepreneurs throughout the greater Atlanta area. Is this pretty close to where you thought your career would land?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And if someone tells you that they've been doing something for 10, 20, 30 years and they knew exactly where they were going, I don't know
lying.
that. I don't know if I believe it. So I think looking back, I, for a long time, knew that I would be some sort of educator. I didn't know what form that would take. And I think I knew that I needed to educate before I knew I needed to be an educator, if that makes sense. So my whole path has led to me teaching other people. So I think back to, I probably would have been in high school, maybe college, and my grandfather got a new cell phone. This would have been college because it was an iPhone and he wasn't an early adopter. So everyone was so frustrated with him because, I mean, how do you use an iPhone? And doesn't even know how to have those conversations to learn how to use an iPhone. And so we sat there, we were at a campground and went through the phone, and I explained to him what an application is and why it matters and what these different symbols mean and how to simply navigate the phone. And when I finished, everyone looked at me and they were like, that made so much sense. And you were so patient with him. And I'm like, well, he doesn't know what he doesn't know. I can't hold that against him. And they were like, yeah, but I would have. So then fast forward a few years, and when I was working on my MBA, I had a professor explain to me how my brain worked. And that's always fun when someone else tells you how your brain works. But he said, Sara, you are able to take these big, complicated ideas and distill them down into bite-sized nuggets so that the layman can understand it. He said, this is a skill that not a lot of people have. You need to leverage that. And that was around the time that I was really starting to see that I needed to educate people. And so that education has taken quite a few forms. When I was in banking, I found myself like trying to create SOPs. Like, girl, why? Why are you doing this? And I was like, but I could make them so cute and it could help the next teller. And then when I was in real estate, I focused in on first time home buyers. And so I did first time home buyer workshops. I had training sessions where we would sit down for an hour before they'd start buying their house and we would talk about what to expect in the process. Because anytime you do something for the first time, it's scary because you don't know what comes next. But if you have a plan to follow, you're a little less nervous. So we would spend an hour up front going through that. I put together magazines for my home buyers so they would know what trends to expect and things along those lines. And then eventually I moved into higher education. And so I was headhunted to teach at my alma mater, Marshall University, and they wanted me to teach in their sales, entrepreneurship, and marketing departments. And so I had the opportunity to formally be a teacher. And so you would think, oh, well, that's the highest and best use, isn't it? And for a while, I thought maybe it was, but then I realized you don't have to be in a classroom to be an educator. You can educate in other areas. And so a lot of my focus right now, while I am still in the classroom, I tend to be educating those who maybe didn't have the opportunity to go to school and helping them with their business. And so all along the way, I have been educating, and I consider myself an educator, but that doesn't always tie together nice and neat. I could have not told you 15 years ago that I would be living in Atlanta working with business owners.
That is an amazing story about how you got there. And just I love it because it's you built on absolutely everything. And I love what you're saying there with, education does not just only happen in the classroom. Um, and I do have a question. Can you please tell us, the audience, and specifically me, what does family business mean? What is that definition?
So, in different contexts, I use different definitions for family businesses. So, for example, in my research, especially if I'm talking about a large business, so if we're looking at Fortune 500, we're going to have a definition that talks about percentage of ownership. But in my day to day, especially when I'm working with the center, I tend to work with smaller family businesses. A lot of them are doing revenues under $25 million a year. And so those businesses tend to be closely held, often still by the founding family, and often no one else involved. So the definition that I use on my daily life tends to be having two or more family members involved in the business and having the ability to shape the strategy of the business. So, what we see often with family businesses is this desire for legacy. And so, legacy could be the opportunity to employ your grandkids, whether or not they're born yet. It could be giving back to the community in a way that has some sort of lasting impact. Or it could just be building up a business big enough that you can sell it, put that money in a trust, and take care of, again, non existent grandkids, but something that has that long-term time horizon. So to recap, two or more family members in the business and making strategic decisions for the business.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for that. And can you tell us more about what the Family Enterprise Center does?
Sure. So we at KSU, we are the oldest oldest center for family businesses in the country. So we've been doing this for almost 40 years, and we work with family business leaders to help them grow, help them navigate their family dynamics, and help them to develop and sustain a legacy. So all of our work is education based. We're part of a university, and as we've established, I'm an educator. So of course it's education based, but we help create this space for other family business leaders to not only learn how to be a better business person, but also how to navigate the business community because family businesses tend to do things a little differently than the businesses we learn about in an MBA program.
So I obviously stalked the center's website a little bit before this, not a lot. I didn't do as much research as I should, but I love that the center, offers resources, events, and just community engagement in general, which is what you're talking about here. What's been your favorite like program, workshop, event, and what outcomes came from that?
So we do so many programs. We have monthly, we do a strategic workshop where we bring in family business leaders to learn from each other. We do webinars, peer groups, roundtables, panel discussions. We're in the process of planning our first symposium.
Okay.
Just so many different events. The one that stands out to me, we had a couple of family business leaders speak on a panel, and they discussed some of the people and the processes that they have in their business that has led them to success. And what I loved about that was that we had very different industries. We had a food truck representative, someone that was in tech, like someone that was in finance, just all over, and that the audience were just hanging on their every word because so many things about being a great business leader span industry. And so we learned how to nurture your employees. We had one of our food truck operators, she was telling us that the turnover in that industry is just astronomical. As you may imagine, she employs a lot of college students, they graduate, they move on. Like that's what we want. We want to see them grow and be successful. But she has found a way to pour into them and nurture them so that her turnover has dropped by over 50%. Like,
Wow.
those are unimaginable numbers. And everyone in the audience was just rapidly taking notes. And
Yeah.
hearing all of these little experiences and bringing the community together to learn from each other, and that was months ago. And I still have people come up and they're like, you remember this event that we did? Gosh, it's close to a year ago now. And you remember when Laura told us this? And I'm like, yes. And they're like, this is how I'm implementing it in my business. And to see so much impact coming from one singular event, it makes my heart happy as an educator.
I love what you've been doing with that. That it's absolutely beautiful and chef's kiss about that. Just absolutely. I love the idea of in business something of defining stakeholders differently, meaning, okay, a stakeholder is obviously the person that's involved and invested in the business, but what about the community that houses the business? And I love that kind of what can we do? So it looks like you are doing the good work, and that makes me very pleased. And I'm just very thankful to have you on the show and be introduced to you by Heather. So now I'm also intimidated, but that's okay.
Only the best here. Listen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then there's me. But hey, do you have any new studies that you're excited about on the horizon?
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about what's going on in the center. We can talk a little bit about some of the research I'm doing. I think one of the most interesting projects that I'm part of right now is we are exploring what does it mean to be family. So often we use this definition that is blood-based and this idea that not just because it's convenient to say, oh, this is so and so's offspring, but there's actual science behind how you try and take care of the people who are your blood family. And as a society, that's not always how we define family. And there's not a lot of research looking at this idea of found family. And so all of these interesting phenomena that we see in family business research, do they apply in other settings? So for example, we know that communication is different in family businesses. We know that when we're looking at, say, HR practices and the way that they are communicated and the way that they are trained in a family business, we don't have to do quite as much training to get the same outcomes because there's this implicit, understood nature about what the family values and how the family behaves. And so when we're bringing in non-family members, even in industries like hospitality, where it tends to be more non-family members than family members in the business, we're still seeing these results. And so knowing why family is important in a business and how that can have positive implications for the business. What if we look at a different definition of family? And so we have partnered with a group in the queer community that has an access of thousands of queer business owners. And we are exploring the differences between what their biological family has impact on and what their found family has impact on. We haven't finished collecting the data, so I can't give you any results just yet, but very excited to be able to speak to this new and emerging topic of found family and family businesses.
I very much want to know what those findings are. So whenever that report is available, whenever that data is available, please like add me to your like list serve or something because this is super fascinating for me. In essence, my business is hopefully like a family business. I am essentially the head of it and I have friends who are designers, but I don't have children. I don't have siblings. And so who do I assuming I'm successful, who do I pass this on to? Um, and so I only half jokingly, half serious put in my contracts with my designers that their kids get a stake in the company because they have children and I want this to be something that we grow together. So my designers are my friends and they are also, an extension of my family too, because I don't have the blood relatives to take it on necessarily, maybe one or two, but the people I choose to interact with are you guys, like are my friends who are more like sisters to me. And so if I would be perfectly comfortable leaving my business to, Layla or Lane or, my designer's kids, some are older than others, but whoever really wants to take it on, I would happily mentor them to do so. And I think that still counts, like that's still a family business that's still offering a legacy there because my friends' kids, my brother-in-law's kids, they are also my legacy to some extent because I don't have kids, but I'm helping to shape them too. And so I very much want to be a part of that group of family businesses. I just happen to be an only child with no children of my own. So it's a matter of finding that family and determining who gets it, who has the same values, who wants to do the same things for the same reasons, roughly, and who could carry on after me. So yes, very interested in all of that kind of data.
I think that's such an interesting nuance. And we're seeing that more in the last several decades of having only one child or having no children. And then what happens to the business? If you have something successful and you want to preserve that legacy to last for generations, you should still have an option. And I will let you know that in some instances, like we see this often in Japan, is that they will adopt an adult person. I don't want to say the word child, but they'll adopt an adult into the family so
That's
they can
awesome.
take over the business. It's especially helpful if none of your children are interested in the business or have the skill set. Why not adopt someone and then we keep it in the family?
Adoption. I was actually wondering, I was like, this is the coolest, like absolute coolest just thing to me because Heather, you are an only child. I'm an only child. I'm adopted. I like the we have a lot of different just by this is the idea of inclusivity, of course, is you are talking about you are centering the queer community in this story that you were telling. And then by telling that story, you also were able to like bring out, oh yeah, that also includes us too, in a way, like of I see how this family business thing can affect us. And that's wonderful. I just love that. Chef's kiss about inclusivity. So you're
Yeah,
cool.
it's a large section of the population if you're
Yeah.
really thinking about it, especially as you said, like we're seeing fewer people have children, especially in the US at this juncture, and they're having children later, and we're having smaller families, one child, and things like that. So you do kind of have to create your own network and community, and that all looks a little bit different than it did in the nuclear family of, the 1950s, 2.5 kids and
Yeah,
the
it was
white
like the
picket fence,
1950s.
um, which didn't necessarily exist as written, but that's our idea of it. So yeah, like it, it's a very large underrepresented community, which is odd to say, especially when you say that there hasn't been a lot of research involving these kind of avenues of things. So yes, that's I'm glad that somebody is looking into these things now.
We have
um,
a great research team that's working on this one. And while I'm part of a couple of projects, the team as a whole is doing so much more with this concept of found family and what does that look like in different environments. There's going to be some impressive research coming out in the next couple of years because research takes a while. It never happens in one fell swoop. So while we're starting the project, we started it a year ago, it probably won't be published for a couple more years. But you're going to start seeing more of it.
Good research takes time, and these are the things that are worth it, to learn later. Um, I knew we were going to spend a lot of time on this one particular topic, but moving on, um, kind of more an individual level. Not only is it a tough job market out there right now, I feel like a lot of small family businesses are struggling as well. Like I think they're feeling the squeeze in this moment. What advice do you have for people who might be considering starting a business with their family at this juncture?
So it's always a good time to start a business because you own it and you get to make the decisions for it. There's a couple of things that I would keep in mind if you're wanting to start with your family. One, know what your business is. So, from an entrepreneurial perspective, I do a lot of work in the entrepreneurship community. So, I'll speak to that first. You, as a business owner, make sure that you not only have a really cool product, but you have identified a real problem that people are trying to solve. People are throwing money at finding a solution, and the solutions aren't worthwhile. And now, if you see that problem, see that there's not an adequate solution, and have a solution to offer the market, you're going to be in a much better place. At that point, you are just trying to figure out your strategy, how to communicate with your audience, how to get the product from a warehouse to your customer. Those are easy business problems, but you have to have that good product market fit
Mhm.
first and foremost. Now, if you're wanting to do it with your family, I've got a couple other suggestions. One is to set some boundaries, like have guidelines for who does what, when, and why. And it's very easy to think, oh, well, I see them every day, they will just get it. And often they do, but also often your communication was crap and you need to do better at communicating with these people. They know you, they can't read your mind. And so setting who's going to do what, when, and why is very helpful. Just having that on a sheet of paper and kind of spreading it amongst the leadership team is a great start. If you want to take it a level further, we often talk about developing a family constitution. So, what does it mean to be part of this family? What does it mean to be part of this family business? Who gets to join the family business? So you've been in business for a few years and now kids or niece and nephew or your best friend's child, whoever it may be, they want to join. How do you decide that they are worthy of that opportunity? Do they need to have had certain skills, certain experiences, or does just everybody get a job that wants one? There's not a right way or a wrong way, but just have a way and have that written down so that it's already communicated. It's so much easier to navigate problems when they're theoretical and hypothetical and no one's getting their feelings hurt. If you establish that you must have 5 years of external experience before anyone is wanting to join the business, that's just a thing that you can point to on a wall and say, go get your 5 years and then come back. If you have not established that, when someone wants to join and you're like, well, you really need some more experience, it becomes personal and it can create a rift. And so when you're in a family business, you need to ensure that you have clear communication, because what happens in the business will overlap and it'll affect your Thanksgiving dinner. And y'all still have to look at each other at Thanksgiving. Be prepared.
I like that. I like, doing the legwork up front so that you know what you're anticipating problems before the problems arise, and it doesn't make it personal when those problems do arise in a personal setting.
And seek out some resources. If you are in the Atlanta metro area, come hang out with me. If you are fine with doing webinar stuff, come hang out with me. If you're not here and you would rather do in person, there's a chance that there's a center near you that is
Yeah.
also offering resources for family business owners and leaders. So for example, we have a session coming up. It's what you need to know before you hire your first family member. Ah, oh, I wish everyone would have taken this. I wish everyone would have sat through this and learned some of the pitfalls and how to chaos proof their business. So if you're listening to this now and you're interested, it's probably up on our YouTube channel if you want to go and watch.
What's that, YouTube? Okay,
No,
cool.
our YouTube is Family Enterprise Center at KSU.
Okay, cool. Heather and I are focused on the individual worker in this podcast, but hiring is a two-way street. In your opinion, what are some things businesses should do to make the hiring process easier?
So the hiring process is unnecessarily messy. And I understand that it is very important to um, pick a candidate correctly, because they're going to be part of your culture, and the process of having to let someone go is anxiety inducing and is expensive. But that doesn't mean that you should rush the hiring process. So a couple of things that would make it a little better. If you have the ability to post not only a template job description, but what the job actually does, as well as what it pays. And I know that not every organization has that ability. For example, I work at a university. I don't get to pick what the job posting is, and I don't get to pick what it includes. But when having those conversations with people, if you can be candid, do be candid, because there's nothing worse than thinking that this position should pay X, and then you get through the process of multiple interviews to find out that it pays like 0.75 of X. It's insulting to everyone. And if you're embarrassed of what the position pays, you need to reevaluate that. So I think clear communication from the beginning is very important. The next thing that I would look at is really take the time to understand not only what you need skills wise, but what you need in terms of the person themselves, what their values are, what their personality is. So, for example, when I hire for the center, I know that it is important that you love small businesses, because if you aren't passionate about small businesses, you're not going to jive with us. Like, we are deeply passionate about small family businesses. We're going to bother you after a very short amount of time if you don't have that same passion. Also, you need to be a fan of educating. So that is a huge piece. You don't have to have formal education. No, you have to appreciate the value of education. And that sounds silly, but not everyone does. And so I know that that is a test for me. Do you understand and appreciate education? Like, if you're going to a museum, are you going to read the things on the wall? Number three is understanding the not just the values, but the personality. So when I'm hiring, it's what skill would complement us. So if you are a fan of personality tests, maybe take a look at one of those. I know DISC assessment is really popular, and I knew when I was hiring my most recent team member that we are low on compliance. And we work for the government. We need someone that is good on compliance. Meanwhile, I'm over here like, let's try this, let's go here. And we have a lot in the D, I, and S categories, but the C, we could use some help on our team. And so when I was interviewing, not only was I trying to be clear about what the actual expectations were above and beyond what was allowed in the job description, but also what thought processes do you use when you solve problems? How do you go about it? And so knowing these takes a lot of work. Like to sit down and say, this is who I am as a leader. Here's where I fall short. That just terrifies people. No one wants to sit still and do that. But in doing that, you develop this much more detailed understanding of what you're looking for in a person. And so then when you go through the interviews, you don't have to go through 37 rounds of interviews. You can pick up on them very quickly. I understand the need for two, like you do a screening, you do an in-person, maybe a third, especially if it's like a higher level position or more nuanced. When you're getting to 7, 8, 9, what are we doing here? Like, that's so many interviews. Who
You're
has
in
time for that?
technology.
Exactly. I'm a hiring manager and I don't want to go through that many interviews. If HR would let me get by with one instead of two, I would consider it. So knowing what you need, communicating that, and very clearly looking for it while you're interviewing. Don't drag out the process.
Yeah. So, like, we've talked a lot about transparency. I think that's what's needed in these moments. And also trust your instincts as a hiring manager, because by 7 or 8 rounds of interviews, you should be paying these people for their time. That is a full day's work or more
Yeah.
so. So, yes, you need to make the best decision, but you also need to take chances. You're never going to have all of the information up front. So you have to just kind of jump in at some point.
Exactly. So go through and rank. There are ways that you can identify. So I often talk to people about EOS, which is the Entrepreneurship Operating System. If you all are familiar, if you're not, one of the things that we talk about in that process is having the right people in the right seats. And so that's two check boxes, and two is a manageable number. And so is it the right person? Do they align with the values? So this is the compliance portion of who I was looking for. Do they um, love small family businesses? Do they have those set skills? And then are they in the right seat? Can they do the things that this job requires? Do they have either experience, or do they seem like they have something that could transfer and apply to this? Is it the right person? Values? Is it the right seat? Do they have the skills? And that's enough. We don't need to go through so many rounds that everybody's just getting tired of each other. And then by the time they do get hired, they're grumpy. And you don't want your new employees to be grumpy.
Yep. So we've talked a lot about the job hunting process and what to do in certain situations, but we haven't really covered proactive and long-term career planning. Sara, in all of your research on the structure of family business planning, have you come up with any tips for individuals looking to create a 5, 10, or 20-year career plan?
So a lot of the research that we do in family business is set for the whole business. And
Yeah.
we tend to talk about long-term time horizons because that's one of the things that really makes family businesses special is that they're not just concerned about what does the line look like at the end of the quarter? What do the returns look like at the end of the year? Instead, it's am I creating a business that is sustainable, that can be passed down for generations? And so when you take that shift from am I making the best decision for today and tomorrow to am I making the best decision for this decade and the next decade, you're going to see things a little bit different. And I think that some of that can be applied to an individual. I see some of that happening even in my own career, in that don't get as caught up in taking the next step. Know that you're on the right path. And so
Mhm.
for me, I'm an educator. And so as long as that next step is keeping me on the path of being an educator, I know I'm in a good place. It doesn't mean that I have to be in the classroom. It doesn't mean that I have to be working with undergrads or MBA students or entrepreneurs, but I do know that I need to be educating. And so when you are trying to figure out what does this look like long term, take some time. It's a very uncomfortable activity. Find out what matters to you. What is the most important thing? And so for me, we have education. I feel very blessed that I was able to dedicate so much of my time and energy to going and getting educated. And I feel obligated to share that with people who don't have the time or ability to go get that same education. And so I see that manifesting in a lot of ways throughout my career. Something else that really matters to me is this idea that a rising tide lifts all ships. And so I will gladly pour into something that may or may not have a direct impact on what I am doing because I know it's for the better of the whole. And so that mindset is also important. So if there is an opportunity that comes up to be a volunteer at something, I am willing to take it, even though it might be something above and beyond, because you don't know how that pans out. And if you all are interested, happy to share how a volunteer opportunity has kept me in Georgia in this position that I'm at now. But in terms of planning, keep an eye on the long term and make sure that your next step just doesn't take you off the path.
I love that. I think one of the challenges of long-term planning is, life. I mean, this is life, I set my sights on being an on-air journalist when I was 20. It's what I thought I was going to do, and then my life happened. I found myself in a completely different role. How frequently should someone revisit their long-term plan in sorry. How frequently should someone revisit their long-term plan in case of revisions, changing industry, or new passions?
I could tell you, oh, you should check in every year, every quarter, every month. I don't know that there's a set. I feel like life comes in waves. And so you'll know when to reevaluate. If something is changing, say maybe you've made a big purchase, or maybe you've invested in a particular relationship, or maybe you've taken new training that helps your career, those are logical points, like big milestones. But I think it's good to just sit back and ponder frequently. Like, am I still on the right path? So for me, I just had a big conversation last week with my husband. Here is where I'm trying to go. And so it's still the same path. It's still educating. Unsurprisingly, it's still with entrepreneurs, but there are a couple of steps that need to happen to best prepare me for whatever those next moves may be. And they may happen, they may not. And to your point about being an on-air journalist, I love that, but also that's so permanent. You didn't have any experience in that. Who knows that you want to be on air? Who knows that if you want to stay in journalism, you could want to do something similar but different, and then you feel like a failure. We don't need to feel like failures. There's only one life that we're living, and we're doing the best job of anyone else living it because I'm the only one living it. So, like, I can't be a failure. I think a great way to sum that up, though, I don't remember what country it was. I think it was in Europe. Instead of asking little kids in kindergarten, what do you want to be when you grow up? And my answer, Heather, I don't know if you remember this, I was going to be an architect.
Yep.
100%.
I was going to say it, but I was like, okay, I'll let her do it.
I knew I was going to be an architect.
Yep.
And I don't know why. I think it was just a cool word. Like, architect. Like,
It
it
does
feels good.
sound really good, doesn't it?
And it makes grown-ups like happy because you have something that's like,
It's
oh
concrete.
yeah, that's a thing.
It's a
Yeah.
tangible thing that they know what it is.
Yeah. And then I'm like, why do I want to be an architect? I have no clue. I'm not interested in bridges or structural design. I don't know. So I
Your
think
Sims houses were great, by the way.
that's about all I got.
That's awesome. I
Sim
love
Tower.
Sim.
Yeah. So I think instead of asking that question of what do you want to be when you grow up, as if your occupation is your identity. They would ask children, what do you want to do when you grow up? Or a variant on this of, how do you want to help when you grow up? And I love that question, because what do you want to what do you want to be? How do you want to help?
Yeah.
Ooh. So, Neera, going back to your example of being an on-air journalist, what was it that you were wanting to help with? How did you want to help when you answered that question?
I wanted to help tell the stories of people that were disenfranchised. Um, and so I was working with Channel 13 at the time. Whenever I did my um, what is that called?
Internship?
Internship. Yes, that is whenever I did my internship. And, very quickly, because I had my children at 22. So at 20, I had this idea that I was going to become this on-air journalist, and I loved it. I was really good on air. People liked to see me. I hadn't had my stroke yet, so I could read the teleprompter. Um, but then life happened, and I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it. So but it's funny because I look at it now and I am utilizing those things that I learned in college. I learned how to work a camera. I learned how to work the technology. And so, in a roundabout way, I am still in television. It's just this kind.
And so I think that's the long-term path. So you thought that you knew where the endpoint was, and like that's a great starting point for your thought exercise. But what you really wanted to do was to tell stories, and to tell stories of disenfranchised people. And so when you are making career decisions, are you stepping towards that? Are you staying on that path? Now, you may 5 years down the road say, okay, I said disenfranchise people, but maybe I want to be more specific, or maybe I want to be less specific, or I wanted to tell the stories, but now I want to tell the stories in a different way. And so as you have these moments, these self-reflective check-in moments on your path, you might readjust, but you're never really starting over, because you knew, even at the young age of 20, what it was that you wanted to do.
Mhm. Heather, I like her.
I know, right?
Uh,
I love that. Like, how do you want to help? How do you want to serve people? That's always my question because I work
hmm
with nonprofits. It's who are we serving and how are we doing it? And I think, little Heather wanted to do a lot of things. Heather wanted to be a teacher. Heather wanted to be a counselor. Heather wanted to write. Basically, I wanted to tell stories and I wanted to help people through whatever it is that they were going through so that they could feel connected in some way. And so I think we're doing a lot of that with this podcast. We're still educating, we're still helping, we're still supporting. And also my work with nonprofits because it's still serving the community in a tangible way. And so these things do definitely bend and change throughout your life, but often they might lead to an unexpected place, but it's still related to where you started.
And as you live through it, there will be very clear points in which you're like, oh, there was a big pivot here.
Yeah.
This was a big change. One of my big changes, I was working with our downtown community in Huntington, and planning all sorts of events and doing really cool things to help with the economic development and growth. And all these businesses I was working with, they were doing things unlike what we learned about in our MBA program. And I'm like, I don't understand why. It's because the MBA program taught us to maximize shareholder value. And these businesses were family businesses, and they wanted to preserve a legacy,
Yep.
to uphold their family, whatever that meant to them. And for each of them, it was a little different, which made the pattern harder to pick up on. But when I realized that, I knew that I wanted to impact the education system. And so I started adding family business projects to my classes that I was teaching. And then when I decided that I was going to go back to school, I wanted to study family businesses because I felt like it wasn't being talked about enough. And so that's a big pivot for me. Like, I didn't come from a family business. How did you get involved in this? That's that key moment for me. But they don't always have to be that big. And I think just constantly re-evaluating little changes is the next step on my path. Is it getting me closer? And it doesn't have to look like it's closer for anyone but you. So if you were to look at took a look at my CV or my resume and you're like, how did you get from here to here to here? It might not make sense, but that's where your cover letter comes in. That's where the narrative surrounding your journey and why you took these steps. And so with a narrative, it feels as if my path has been planned down to the letter, and it has not been. I've just made small choices that kept me aligned on the same journey.
And smart choices.
They're smart now because they're attached to a narrative. And I tried to make educated decisions, but you never have all the information. And it's important to act. Don't don't develop analysis paralysis and then not live your life.
For sure. So, in addition to your research on business, your personal work experience is in academia. We're talking about this now. You're an educator, which is another cutthroat job market, frankly. What advice do you have for researchers and educators looking into university positions? And what do you think higher education looks like in the US in the next decade or more?
Ooh, so to the first one, don't take anything personal. The job market is very cutthroat, and you could be a phenomenal candidate and you don't know who that other person is.
Yep.
So don't beat yourself up. You have plenty of research in progress. You have plenty of teaching experience. You have a strong enough pipeline. I'm sure, interviewed well enough. You prepared. Don't beat yourself up. And don't take the results personal because a lot of times there's nothing else you could have done. I've been on quite a few search committees, and those decisions are difficult. I've also applied for lots of jobs at lots of universities, and I don't think it ever gets easier. I mean, I can think back to all the flyouts I did, and you're looking in the area and you're like, what would it be like to live here? How could I adapt? And that is draining. And I would love to tell you don't waste your energy on that, but I did. And you can't help it. So don't take it personal. Don't take yourself too seriously. And then what do I think that higher education is going to look like in the next couple years?
Yeah.
Ooh, there's a couple of big changes happening. So if you're in higher education, you've heard the enrollment cliff. Dun, dun, dun. We talk about that all the time. It is essentially the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. So 2008, the financial crisis is happening. What do you do if you don't have a lot of money? You have fewer kids because kids are expensive. And so we are seeing not only fewer high school age children applying to come to college, there's also other options. So people are a lesser percentage of people are coming to college. So that's two whammies. We have fewer people in the pool, and then less of the pool is coming. And so what does that really mean? That means there's less revenue dollars. And when there's less money, we either freeze positions or we fully cancel full lines. And I'm assuming we have a fair amount of listeners from the West Virginia region. You know what's going on with WVU and programs being cut. That's wild. I think that a lot of schools are going to try and avoid that, but we're going to see cuts in other ways. So there will likely be some mergers. So in the state of Georgia, we have an entire university system, and all the schools belong to that same system. And there's yeah, it's a really cool process. So there's a board that oversees what's happening with all the universities. And so they make sure that we play nicely together,
Well, that's
and that we're not,
nice.
oh, yeah, it's a really nice setup. They make sure that we're not overlapping in our offerings. So there's some schools that focus more on research, some that focus more on teaching, some that are kind of in a balance. some that are community, some that pull more from out of state, but there is a strategic plan for the entire system. And in states that have systems like that, I imagine we'll see some mergers, especially with smaller schools to prevent redundancies. So I see that happening. And then I see the way that we educate changing. And I don't know what impact that's going to have on the university as a whole. But the introduction of generative AI, oh gosh, it's such a hot topic. If you're not talking about the enrollment cliff, you're talking about generative AI. Like that seems to be the two topics you can't escape in a university. And that's because AI allows you to have so much information at your fingertips and synthesized in a way that you can process it faster than a list of Google search results. And so it has its pros, it has its cons. My personal belief on it is it's the introduction of the calculator, it's the introduction of the internet. It is a tool that you need to know how to use. It can be taken advantage of. You still need to know how to add numbers in your head, but you don't always have to add the numbers in your head. Need to know how to think strategically. You need to know how to write, but you don't have to go at it alone anymore. And so I know I'm personally finding ways to implement it in my classroom that is a tool for students to learn how to use the tool, not take advantage of the tool. Like they're still paying to get an education, and I need them to get an education while they're in my classroom, but that doesn't mean that I should shun the use of calculators or shun the use of the internet.
I love that. I absolutely love that because whenever I wasn't able to get back into education yet because I had to save up a little bit of money to get back in, I was using ChatGPT to just ask, like, hey, real quick, what is this? What is that? And it would help me. And I was using it for Sartre because I was having some problems understanding Jean-Paul Sartre. And then I was, what is it, Simone de Beauvoir? Whatever their names are. I was having some problems understanding some philosophy. So I used Chat GPT and it was lovely. Now I'm in school and I actually used it to help me. Like I've always struggled with grant writing because I didn't go to school for grant writing because you go to school for that. But I'm an executive director now, and I need to know how to do that because I'm a one-man show pretty much. So I said, "How do you do this?" And then it showed me, and then I said, "Oh, I've only ever needed a good model or a template, and I know I'm a writer. It's not, I didn't use that, but I didn't use the Chat GPT's what it gave me. I learned from it because I was able to see a model. And I'm so glad that you understand that it can be a tool and it is useful. Thank you for that.
I think part of it is because the way that I look at the Family Enterprise Center is it's a business within the university. We're responsible for generating our own revenue and making sure that I make payroll, and like those are real world business decisions. And we use ChatGPT every single day. We joke and say that it's the fourth member of our team because it just helps to round out some thinking. Like, hey, I have this thing I see someone else doing. I want to take this spin on it. I want to do this. Could you tell me what questions I need to answer in order to have a more holistic understanding of this project I want to undertake? And so it asks some questions, and then we sit and we churn on them. But I see the benefit. I also see it done very poorly. I work with so many external businesses that are like, oh, I'll be able to use ChatGPT to help develop my business strategy. And I'm like, no, 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 no. That's not what
That's
it's for. Now, if you want to use ChatGPT to understand other business strategies, you can work on that. So take a publicly traded company and you could have a whole conversation about what that looks like, but you still need to be able to apply the strategic thinking to it.
We've had a lot of conversations about AI and just like being cautious with how you're using it, making sure that you're not relying on it as a crutch necessarily, because you still need to have the critical thinking skills. You still need to have the writing skills if you're going to be a writer, if that's part of your job, but it can certainly save you time from a research perspective. You also have to be cautious though, because it doesn't have access to things behind a paywall. So journals that are scientific research and things like that, it can't get to that. So you can't guarantee that you have a full view of everything, but it's a good starting point. It can give you something of a lit review to get your brain working and to kind of help you in your search for information. It can do that significantly faster. So there is, I do caution, but obviously I do see the value in you're saving weeks of time if it can do a lit review for you. Um, so kind of moving on, our audience is largely early career women. What advice do you have for those just starting out, whether they're looking to start a business or just generally working for somebody else? What advice do you give them when they're kind of in that beginning stage and the world is their oyster?
I will pass along some of the most impactful advice that one of my mentors gave me. She said, Sarah, if you find yourself in a room, you belong there. Do not question yourself. And to this day, I still say that to myself out loud. Anytime I'm in a situation where I'm like, oh, wait. And I'm like, no, I belong here. It's okay. So remember that. You wouldn't be in the room if you did not belong. I think another good piece of advice is don't doubt yourself, kind of goes hand in hand. But your opinions are valid. And I feel like where I grew up, it was very much hierarchical. I feel like often, I don't want to say women were subservient, but there was definitely a men were given the opportunity to speak up more than women. Now, not in my household, my parents made sure of that, but you saw it a lot. I saw it a lot in business settings, when I was interviewing for jobs, when I was just working as a young professional. And it's very easy to fall into this, well, everyone's doing it, so this is how I should behave. And I recommend not doing that, learning how to speak up and just knowing that people are going to say you're aggressive, you're assertive. Those are gendered terms, and just own them. Don't be less. Do not make yourself smaller to fit into a box. If you are an expert on something, own it and speak up when it's appropriate. Now always be polite, and like we don't need to go be domineering in a room or anything crazy, but if someone says something and you know that that is not correct and you are the expert on the topic, correct them.
I
That's
love
beautiful.
that. You're my hero.
Yeah, I know. We're like, whoa! Oh no.
This is what we need to hear too as
Yeah.
women in our 30s too, because we're taught to be less. We're
Mhm.
taught to be meek. I have been told I'm assertive or bossy or whatever the word is, but there's never a male equivalent. You
Yeah.
never hear a man as bossy,
It's
you
just
know.
leadership for a man.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so I don't know that I could do this in my early 20s, and I don't know I would recommend it. But for the listeners in their 30s and 40s, it may be time to speak up and start asking questions. So if someone says, wow, you're so bossy, I'll be like, you mean I'm a boss because I literally have a leadership position and I'm
Yeah,
doing my job? Is
yeah,
that what you mean?
yeah.
Or would you say that same thing to a man?
Yeah, challenge those thoughts, challenge those biases whenever you can, because it will, if nothing else, get them thinking about what that's saying to them internally. Oh, well, I never thought of it that it will have them kind of reflect as well, and they're going to go forward and kind of maybe question using that language in the
Mm-hmm.
future.
Sarah, I see that the center has monthly virtual office hours. Tell us about that and how people can learn more.
Yeah, so that is a fun play on being part of the university. So if you think back to when you were in undergrad, you may have, hopefully, hopefully, went to your professor's office hours and had just an interesting conversation. And if you are still in school or going back to school, take advantage of your professor's office hours. They're not just to ask questions, it's to develop a relationship and expand your understanding of a topic. And so that's exactly what we do with the virtual office hours at the Family Enterprise Center. And so the idea behind it is, when else are you going to have the opportunity to talk to someone with a PhD in family business management about whatever topic that strikes your fancy? And so once a month, we have a session, and it is moderated by a family business owner. She often brings in a guest. So we'll have kind of a topic that we'll talk about, but they're usually pretty broad. So for example, our upcoming one is on wealth management. Lots of stuff falls into that category. And the audience has the opportunity to come, ask questions of me, of our guests, of each other. And it's a lighthearted conversation to just experience what other family business leaders are doing and learn from them.
I love that.
Yeah, so if you're interested in attending, they are free to the community and they are virtual. So wherever you are located, you are welcome to join. You can find more information about them on our website. It's familyenterprisecenter.com. And you can find all of our upcoming events on there. And they're also on our social medias. So if you are on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, check us out there. And if you want, you can take it even a step further and register for our Roots and Legacies newsletter, in which we share insights for family business leaders. We've got some that is some content that's geared towards smaller family businesses, and some that are geared towards family businesses that are a little more established and they have multiple generations involved. But in there is a list of upcoming events, and you can register for that at familyenterprisecenter.com as well.
Fantastic. So, Sara, thank you for joining us today. It's honestly been very fun. So I'm glad we're starting with you. I'm glad we're getting all of this information and having a good time. Listeners, if you have questions for Dr. Davis, send them my way and I'll make sure she gets them. As she mentioned, you can also follow the Family Enterprise Center on all of the social media channels, including YouTube. You can sign up for their newsletter. You can join them for their virtual office hours. There are lots of ways to get involved, lots of ways to learn from her. Attend Kennesaw State, perhaps, and take one of her classes. She's just going to have a run on all of her classes in the fall because of this podcast, I'm sure. But thank you so much for being here.
Of course. And if you all would like to know more about me, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, Sara E. Davis, PhD. And I would love to connect or find a way that we could collaborate together at some point.
Thank you for coming on here and talking with us. Remember to tune into our next episode, Share Your Journey, where we'll be talking with our guest, Maya Fitzpatrick, about volunteering and mentoring. Working Women is available on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube, so find us wherever you find your podcasts and music. Thank you, everyone.